Hello, welcome back to the Conifer Wood. For this video, I've been working on the script writing for Atlantic Spark Run. Because I thought that script writing would not make a particularly interesting video in and of itself. Can you imagine watching a video of me just sitting at my computer for several hours just writing a script? What I wanted to do was to add a few more things to it than just that. So later in the video you'll see some sketches that I've made of the characters, but before we get into that I just want to talk about my thoughts on the script. So first I want to talk about some of the characters. Sally is the mainest character. She's the one that we follow throughout the animation, and she's the one that I talked about in the first video. She is the operative of the outpost that we're looking at. She is acting as an introductory character to the audience. So what I've noticed in quite a few games nowadays is that when they introduce you to a new world, they will give you a character to play who is also new to that world. So in effect, you're seeing the world through the same pair of eyes. You're experiencing new things as the character is experiencing new things, and I believe that this gives a better feeling of immersion to the player. And I wanted to achieve that kind of thing with Atlantic Spark Run. So Sally is new to the outpost, as we are new to the outpost. She will be guided on her journey by Ren, who is the second character. They are another operative on an outpost further down the Spark Run. They will be guiding Sally. They will be talking her through how to monitor the equipment, how to go up and catch the spark, all these sorts of different things, getting her used to life on the outpost. Because Ren is working on another outpost, we'll never actually see them in the animation. They'll always be on the other end of a radio. And then thirdly, there's Osum, who is the courier for the monthly provisions. What I wanted for her was to be a sort of foil for Ren and Sally's relationship. Because Ren is acting as such a guide to Sally, most of the script so far is those two talking to each other about various different things. And I thought that that ended up in quite a sort of one-dimensional story. So Osum is there to provide a kind of an extra dimension. What I find good about this is that we can have more than just a single relationship. There's all three of them together, but then there's Sally and Osum and Sally and Ren, and presumably off screen somewhere there's Ren and Sally having a relationship. So that really broadens the scope of what I can talk about with each of these characters. I find it interesting that Ren and Sally can have a conversation about Osum when she's off screen, and Osum and Sally can have a conversation about Ren when they're not on the other side of the radio. So the sketches that I've mentioned a couple of times now, in the same way that trying to make a video on me writing is boring, I found it difficult to really get a picture of all of these characters' sort of personalities just through written text. Particularly since the final animation is not a written piece of media. Like in a novel, it would make sense to develop the characters through writing because you only ever see them in writing. With an animation, you see their expressions, you see their fashion, you see the way that they hold themselves. I'm not skilled enough to get that through in writing. These sketches were there to sort of lend a complementary aid to the development of their characters. It's not character design quite yet. It's still a board for making ideas. The main point there was to develop the visual character at the same time as the voice character. So developing those two in tandem I found really helpful. So these are a few of the sketches I've been making this week. On the left here we've got some ideas for Sally, and on the right we have some for Osum. As I said before, this sketchbook is a board for making some ideas on. For the time being, this is just a first look into how she's going to be shaped, I suppose. There are a number of different ones here that have stood out to me. There's this one at the top here, which is one of the first ones I did, and the face to the left of it too. This is a more natural person shape, as opposed to a few of the others, like this Vogue-like figure over here, and this slightly chunkier Sally down here. I think I gravitate more towards natural figures a bit more than cartoony figures, at least when I come to drawing things. When my pencil hits the paper, I guess what it wants to draw is something more realistic. With these drawings, I've been trying to step out of my comfort zone and push and pull the face shapes particularly, but also some of the mark making, into a more expressive version, just to get out of that tendency that I have. This is one of my favourites here, but then I also like this one at the bottom. And here, her body is similarly natural-ish. There are a few things obviously that have been distorted. Her neck is particularly thin, and her waist is particularly high. And then her face shape, I've tried to be super angular with it. And on the left here, I've been more exaggerated with that. I quite like this triangular chin, the straight sides to her face, and her hairstyle I like as well. It gives you a focus up here to accentuate the thin neck, and then we're back down to the same sort of shape down here. And then thirdly, I like this one on the right here as well. This is more pushing the eye socket detail into quite an extreme version, and really pronouncing the cheekbones as well, super high cheekbones. But at the same time very round features, as opposed to this one which is very angular and square. I've also been, with a number of them, pushing this more muscular build. I think that would work nicely with the setting that she's in, having to climb this tower and do engineering work. I think that sort of build tells more of a story of the role that she's playing on the outpost, rather than a thinner one, like this, that I don't really think suits the setting. And then I was also looking at different hairstyles. I really like this one. I was talking before about staying away from cartoon styles, but this very round head shape I actually quite like. I might move forward with that one, just see where it takes me in the future. So moving on to Osun. I had less of an idea of what she would look like. I had a feeling that she'd be more punky, more masculine in appearance, but nothing much more concrete than that. So I played around a bit more with different ethnicities, hairstyles, face shapes, things like that. I started in the top left and moved over and down the page. And I think the later ones I prefer to the early ones over here. This one seems to be more like an action movie heroine, which I don't dislike, but not quite going for the Sarah Connor vibes. This one up here I like, particularly this hair shape, which I've drawn a number of times as well. And her build as well, probably quite similar to Sally over here. I've also played around with more boyish cuts. Osun seems to me to be the kind of woman to keep her hair short. I like this one at the top right here. It's not as chunky as I want, but I like the head shape and the hairstyle. Down here, I was aiming more at an 80s femme fatale character. The big hair, the jacket, the attitude, the personality. I think that fits her quite well, this confidence, rather than this top right one which I was showing you, which I think is a bit more demure perhaps. So I like this one, and this one as well. I'll be working on the fashion a bit later, but I think the puffy bomber jacket thing, oversized clothing, worked quite well, as opposed to whatever this thing is, which I think was meant to be shorts at first, but it kind of looks like a skirt. One thing that did pop into my mind when I started drawing was that I haven't communicated a particular kind of futurism in these characters. A lot of them could be someone that you meet on the street today. A very easy way of signifying that this is the future is a robotic arm or prosthesis like this. I think it's quite cool, but at the same time I think it's also quite cliché. Perhaps some kind of mechanical augmentations to the body might be an interesting way to go. Maybe there's something next to their eye that could indicate that there's some kind of augmented reality going on. Or maybe it's just the designs of the jewellery that they wear, or there might be some LED strips incorporated into their clothes, which I know is quite equally cliched, but it could be quite interesting to play around with that sort of thing. So welcome back to the real me, not just my hands. With the script I did the same thing that I did in the previous video, where I wrote the whole thing first to get what was in my head outside and onto paper or onto the screen as it was. And as I did this, I realised that I didn't have the development of the characters that I really wanted, and I also found that it wasn't exploring the sets that I was going to build as much either. So what I did was to write a few little moments, like page-long things, maybe 20 seconds of dialogue, something like that. Tiny little snippets of time that just looked at certain things that I thought that the main script was missing. The first one was a chat between Sally and Ren about seagulls. So to start with, the company could give out to its operatives a sort of employee handbook about the things that it needs to do, the sort of schedule of maintenance on the outpost. And one of those things would be to clear the tower of seabirds. This might be a problem for the monitoring instruments if they're sort of like very precise, and you have to be very careful about the sort of wind speed and air pressure when you're going up to sort of jump up into the sky to catch the spark. If the birds get in the way of that, then that could be quite a problem. So Sally and Ren are talking about that, and then there's a sort of little scene where Sally goes up and finds there's a nest of seagulls up there, and she sort of clears it out. The second one was more to do with looking at the machinery. I talked about this in the video before this, but I sort of really wanted an aesthetic of like 60s computing, like lots of little lights flashing and dials and nodes and sliders and buttons and all of that kind of cool stuff. And I found that in the script that wasn't really there, so this one is really exploring that kind of thing, and it's going to be Sally in the guts of the outpost, just looking at these machines and thinking like, what the hell is all of this stuff? Like, I only know the meteorology equipment and like a few of the other things, but like there's so much more to it than this. And then the third is a sort of more about Sally's personal character. There's a moment in the script that I wrote where Osum gives a cassette tape to Sally of her favourite band because she's missed out on their world tour that they're doing at the moment. And I thought this was nice, but it sort of came out a bit of left field, like it wasn't really built up very much. So I wanted to make a short little scene that sort of established the fact that Sally was into this band. Perhaps in the very first scene, she could be shown to sort of like turn it on the radio, and then that could be sort of the backing music for the whole sort of like first half. And then the fourth one was a development on Osum's character and also an exploration a bit of their relationship with the company that Sally works for. So it starts off with Sally cleaning the logo on the side of the outpost, which would be part of the schedule of maintenance in the handbook. And Osum turns up and is like, "Why are you doing this? This isn't particularly important to the jump, surely, when you catch the spark." And they sort of talk about it a little bit. And what I wanted to sort of portray here was a teaser for like maybe a bigger conspiracy that's happening, but that never actually like gets played out because that's not really the point of the story. So Osum asks Sally whether she really knows what the company is doing and what the sparks are for. And there's a sort of a moment of hesitation, and then Sally realises that she doesn't really care about that sort of stuff. She's got her own things going on. She has her own reasons to be there that are not to do with finding out what this company does. And I thought that might be quite interesting to kind of give you a glimpse into a wider sort of outside world, but not really focus the story on that. So those are my thoughts for the script so far. There's still a lot of work to do, and it's a work in progress. It's not something that's finished. The script really will take on its full form as I'm designing the characters properly and as I'm designing the sets properly. As with the sketches, the character design will really inform what I write in the script, and with the sets, I can't really know exactly what the cameras are going to be doing or what the lighting is going to be doing until I have an idea, like a concrete idea of what those sets are going to look like. Until that time, the script won't really be finished, but it will be a work in progress. And that's the end of the video. I hope to see you in the next one.